Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're plunging into a really compelling story. How South Korea, well, pretty rapidly, became the second largest missionary-sending country globally.
Yeah, they're really leading the charge among Asian churches in world missions.
It's a remarkable climb, isn't it?
Sure.
Especially when you think Protestantism, there's only just over a century old.
Exactly. And we're drawing heavily today from Timothy K. Park's work on the growth of this movement. It's really insightful stuff.
It really is. And our goal for you listening is to unpack the key moments, the motivations, and just the unique feel of this whole movement.
You know, how did a church that's relatively young get such massive global reach?
I was genuinely surprised by some of the details, I have to say. Get ready for some real aha moments, I think.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's dig in. The author breaks it down into three main historical periods.
Right, each with its own distinct characteristics. The first one is mission during Japanese colonial rule. That's roughly 1907 to 1957.
And what's amazing is even while Korea was under colonial rule, they were planting the seeds for their own missions.
It seems almost counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Totally. You'd think they'd be focused inward.
Yeah.
But no, 1907, the Presbyterian Church in Korea forms this self-supporting, self-governing presbytery.
In their first act.
Their very first act was sending a missionary, Yi Ki-pum, to Jeju Island.
Wow.
And the whole church took up a special offering for it. That says something right off the bat about their priorities.
It really does. And it didn't stop there. That first step led pretty quickly to more outreach.
Yeah, just a couple of years later, 1909, they're sending people to Vladivostok in Siberia.
To Korean students in Tokyo.
And even way over to California and Mexico, reaching Korean immigrants there.
So that early focus on their own diaspora, that was a key feature of this first phase.
Definitely. But then 1913 comes along, and it feels like a real shift.
The Shantung mission, right?
Exactly. The Korean Presbyterian Church sends ministers to Shantung, China. And this is the kicker.
It wasn't just for Koreans living there?
Nope. This is specifically aimed at the native Chinese population.
Mm-hmm.
They even took a nationwide thank offering for it. Quite a statement.
It's huge, actually, and maybe overlooked sometimes in mission history. The source notes this is probably the first solely Asian-to-Asian mission since, well, the apostolic era.
From what we now call the majority world to another part of it, very early on.
And the scale, considering the circumstances, it's pretty impressive for that time.
Yeah, despite being under colonial rule, they sent around 80 missionaries.
Something like that. And to a real mix of places: Jeju, Siberia, Japan, California, Mexico.
Manchuria, Shantung, Shanghai, Nanking, Peking, even Mongolia.
A lot were serving Korean immigrants initially, sure, but that Shantung mission shows a broader vision was there from early on.
And another interesting thing about Shantung was how they did it. Collaboration.
Right. They worked with the American Presbyterian mission already there and got approval from the Chinese church.
And the Korean missionaries actually became members of the Chinese church.
Which, as the source points out, is a bit different from some later Korean approaches, which were maybe more independent.
So, even facing national struggles, they're doing global mission, often partnering up. The denominations played a big role then.
Definitely. Okay, so that takes us to the second phase. Mission after independence of Korea, about 1955 to 1991.
And this sounds like it brought a whole new set of challenges.
Oh, absolutely. You had the end of WWII, but then major instability, the communist revolution in China, the Korean War itself.
So that initially just stopped missionary work.
Pretty much halted it, yeah. A tough period.
But the resilience. Wow. It's just incredible. Korea gains independence in 45, then gets torn apart by war.
Yeah.
Yet, pretty soon after, the Korean church starts sending missionaries again.
And often without much official backing, political, church hierarchy, or even financial.
Still operating from that position of weakness, as the source calls it.
That's a key phrase for this era. Korean missionaries were mostly serving under or with Western missions and local churches where they went.
Shows a real spirit of partnership, working with the resources they had.
Definitely. Okay, then we hit the third period, current Korean mission, from about 1980 to now.
And this is labeled mission and affluence. A huge contrast.
A complete turnaround, really.
What caused that big shift?
The whole bunch of things came together. Massive church growth within Korea.
Right.
Huge economic growth for the country. More Koreans moving abroad. Better diplomatic relations globally. Higher education levels.
And just building on all that earlier mission experience.
Exactly. A convergence of factors.
So resources and opportunities really opened up. But the source also sounds a note of caution about this affluence.
Yeah, the potential danger of relying too much on money and resources, maybe less on, faith and the Holy Spirit.
That's universal tension, isn't it? How prosperity can shift your focus.
It is, and the scale now is just staggering. The 2010 figures mentioned were 20,840 Korean missionaries
Wow.
working in 169 countries, truly global.
And looking deeper into those numbers, most are long-term, right? 94% serving over 3 years.
Yeah, only 6% short-term. And it's not just ordained ministers, though. They and their spouses are about 66%.
A significant chunk, 34%, are lay missionaries.
Which shows really broad involvement from the whole church.
Not geographically. They're everywhere.
Pretty much. Big concentrations in Northeast and Southeast Asia naturally, but also lots in Central Asia, Europe, the Americas, Africa. It's a worldwide effort.
The source also flags some big shifts since the 70s. One is moving beyond just serving Korean immigrants.
Right. A definite shift towards cross-cultural missions, aiming for unreached people groups specifically, broadening the vision.
And another is the rise of Korean mission organizations.
Yes. Instead of always working under Western groups, you now have hundreds of Korean denominations and specific mission agencies.
Groups like Global Mission Society, UBF, GMF, InterCP.
Exactly. And these agencies now actually send slightly more missionaries than the denominations themselves. Shows real maturity in the movement.
And that whole transition from mission from weakness to mission from strength, it's undeniable.
But with that strength comes that potential pitfall we mentioned, maybe over-relying on the material side.
Right. Okay, so we've seen the history. What about the reasons behind this incredible growth? The source groups them divine, human, organizational, contextual. Let's start with divine.
Okay. Here, the big emphasis is on spiritual revivals, especially that great revival movement in Pyongyang back in 1907.
That same year, they sent their first missionary.
Exactly. Seen as a huge spark for that initial missionary passion. And the tradition of regular revival meetings helped keep that spiritual fire going.
You see that connection often, don't you?
Yeah.
Spiritual renewal leading outward.
Definitely. The text also mentions things like healings reported in Jeju, seen as signs of the Holy Spirit empowering the movement.
Okay. Then the human factors. What stands out there?
The Korean spirit of gratitude is highlighted.
That's it.
Well, sending that very first missionary, that special thank offering for the Shantung mission, these are seen as expressions of deep thankfulness for the gospel they'd received.
Like, we received this gift, we have to share it.
Precisely. A sense of obligation born out of gratitude.
That's powerful. And leadership.
Crucial. Figures like Reverend Kil Sun-shu, Dr. Helen Kim, Dr. David J. Cho mentioned as key people who really shaped and drove the movement. Strong leaders are vital.
Always are. Okay, organizational factors.
Well, setting up mission committees early on gave them structure.
Made it official, coordinated things.
Right. And that initial collaboration with Western mission groups was also important. Gave them guidance, access to fields.
A productive partnership early on.
Seems like it. And student groups, their role is really emphasized.
Both back in the colonial days and later.
Yes, student missionary societies were active early on, and more recently, things like the Mission Korea conferences since the 90s.
Huge events, right?
Okay.
Tens of thousands of students committing to mission.
Exactly. Shows that ongoing energy, particularly young people, these structures, both denominational and agency-based, were key for mobilizing people.
Got it. Finally, the contextual factors. The wider environment.
Right. So things like increased Korean immigration, the diaspora itself became a mission field, and immigrants became missionaries.
Guess what? What else?
International influences like big missionary conferences, Edinburgh 1910, for example, helped to shape their thinking globally.
And getting the word out. Publications.
Very important. Things like the Korea Mission Field, the Christian Messenger. They spread awareness, shared stories.
Like stories about David Livingstone, igniting passion.
Exactly, those kinds of things. And then more recently, obviously, Korea's economic boom and better diplomatic relations just opened doors worldwide, made travel and engagement much easier.
So it's this complex mix, spiritual fire, human dedication, good organization, and favorable circumstances all coming together.
A confluence of factors, definitely. The source also looks frankly at strengths and weaknesses. Let's touch on the strengths first.
Okay, what are the big pluses?
Well, there are quite a few. Dynamic church growth back home, providing a base.
A strong sending foundation.
Significant financial resources now. A large Korean diaspora creating global links.
Natural networks.
Strong diplomatic ties, helping access. high education levels equipping people,
Good skills for cross-cultural work.
a long history of mission experience to learn from, and just a deep passion and commitment, real dedication.
That's a powerful list of assets. But the source doesn't shy away from weaknesses either. What are the concerns?
Yes, several are raised. One is about mission theology, sometimes maybe too focused on just church planting or denominational growth,
As opposed
as opposed to a broader vision of God's kingdom impacting all of society, justice, reconciliation, transformation.
Okay, that church-oriented versus kingdom-oriented distinction. Interesting. What else?
A tendency towards a monocultural perspective sometimes.
Yeah, meaning maybe unintentionally imposing Korean ways in other cultures.
Potentially, yeah. Which links to another point. Maybe not enough deep local field research to really understand the context before jumping in.
Strategic planning issues.
Could lead to inappropriate missionary deployment or gaps in selection and training for really tough cross-cultural work.
And internally, within the movement.
Some mention of competitive individualism between groups, weaknesses in administration in some organizations, and sometimes not enough cooperation.
Lack of synergy between different players.
Right. Between sending groups, local churches in the field, support networks, the need for better partnership is stressed.
That point about respecting host cultures and avoiding that monocultural view seems really critical for effective mission anywhere.
Absolutely. Learning from mistakes, building real partnerships, promoting local self-reliance, these are highlighted as key for the future. Echoes of things like the Nevius Principles, emphasizing indigenous church leadership.
Okay, so summing up, the Korean church has this long history, basically missionary from the start,
Remarkable willingness to go to difficult places, right from the beginning.
and ambitious future goals, lots of tent-making, self-supported missionaries, alongside career ones.
They're seen as having a really unique and vital role to play in global mission in the 21st century.
And the journey itself demonstrates some key principles, doesn't it?
It really does. Like, even a young church facing poverty, persecution, it can be deeply missionary.
The importance of lay people, not just clergy.
Spontaneous ministry bubbling up, Bible translation being key, indigenous church planting.
Solid Bible teaching, proper training, the power of revival.
And that idea, again, effective mission can come even from a position of weakness.
Finally, the source offers suggestions for the future. How can Korean mission be even more effective?
A few key things.
Right.
Develop that biblically solid, culturally relevant mission theology focused on the whole kingdom, not just church growth.
Keep praying for revival and renewal.
Yes, and really emphasize depending on the Holy Spirit and the Word, not just material resources, to avoid creating dependency.
Build better partnerships, real collaboration with local churches, other agencies. Consult more.
Avoid paternalism. Promote self-support in the churches planted.
Keep doing the student conferences, but also develop deeper field research for better strategy.
Learn from the past successes and failures. And focus on developing strong, ethical mission leaders.
It's quite a roadmap for continued impact.
It is. Aiming for a more holistic, cooperative, and context-savvy approach going forward.
Wow. This deep dive has been really illuminating. That resilience from day one, the outward focus, even amidst hardship, the sheer scale now, it's incredibly impressive.
So many lessons there, I think.
Definitely.
And it really makes you reflect, doesn't it? How can communities, maybe feeling small or under-resourced, still make a huge global difference? What does real partnership and mission actually look like?
Those are big questions for anyone involved in any kind of global endeavor. Really makes you think.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. We hope you found it as fascinating as we did.
Until next time.